Hi, I'm Caroline Valente and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Technology Australia. In this video, I will talk about energy poverty among older and low-income Australians. This presentation is organized as follows. I will give you a very brief introduction of my PhD research, and then I will speak about my preliminary data analysis on energy poverty among older and low-income Australians. I will also mention some of the impacts COVID has had on the energy-poor households and how these strange times aggravated their vulnerable situation. Lastly, I will bring some ideas about what can be done to reduce energy costs and alleviate energy poverty here in Australia.
My PhD research started in mid-2018, so about 2.5 years ago. My research aims to explore and investigate the causes, extent, impacts, and potential solutions to energy poverty among a very specific household group, older low-income Australians. I'm adopting a mixed methods approach with a focus on the qualitative component through semi-structured interviews. In this presentation, I will report the preliminary findings of the thematic analysis I conducted in my interview transcripts, and you will see there are many quotes to illustrate the ideas. So, feel free to pause this recording and take your time to read the quotes, as they will give you a very good evidence of the lived experience of these vulnerable households. We know one of the main causes of energy poverty is the poor energy efficiency of the home, right? And many studies have already investigated, especially in Europe, but also here in Australia and New Zealand, the issue of energy poverty in winter. However, there is still a lot to be explored when it comes to how energy-poor households deal with summer, and this is becoming an alarming issue as we speak because of climate change impacts on rising temperatures. So, I've asked interviewers how they coped with summer temperatures in very poor energy-efficient homes. Most of them didn't even have an aircon at home and were not even considering one. Can you imagine a 42-degree Australian summer without an aircon? I sincerely hope you have no idea, but Janine in this quote can give you quite a good picture of how does she feel like at her home. It's just like a sweatbox, absolutely awful, and that's because of the building. Even though Australia is a well-developed country, it lags behind when it comes to residential energy efficiency. The first housing provisions for minimum efficiency requirements came in 2003, and there are recent studies indicating that much of our older stock rates 2 stars or less, in a scale of 10. So you can see in this table how much it costs per square meter per year to heat and cool the home in different star rated ranges, if you want, and more importantly, if you can afford to, keep your home at a comfortable level. Can you spot the difference between a 0.5-star home in Sydney and a 10-star home? That's quite impressive, right? And the problem is, as we all know, older and low-income households tend to live in this poorly energy-efficient spectrum and cannot afford to pay this much to feel comfortable at home, with serious adverse effects to their mental and physical health. Well, in terms of causes of energy poverty among this vulnerable household group, the interviews have shown consistency with previous research. So, besides of course the low-income situation and their home conditions, social exclusion is also an important cause, as they cannot interact with other people and perhaps discuss and compare their bills or even have the chance to receive a trustworthy advice on their energy rates. Another thing is they believe that by being loyal to their energy retailers, they are given good offers. However, for those who shared with me their bills, I could see they were paying for usage and supply charges up to 30% more expensive than current market deals offered online. In other cases, they preferred to stick to the devil they knew, as one interviewee said, because they didn't trust the market and were often disrespected and mistreated when trying to engage with a phone customer service, for example. Other important cause is related to the lack of computer literacy and the difficulty to engage with the online energy market. In fact, many of the interviewees didn't have a good connection to the internet or didn't even have a computer at home. Finally, as many other studies have shown, the difficult situation of private renters. The less disposable income after rent the fact that they have no agency over their place, and also the issue of living in the low quality range of the rental market puts them in a very extreme situation of energy poverty and deprivation. Other important cause of energy poverty among older low-income households is the lack of energy literacy. They have no idea about which appliances consume more energy at home, and in many cases they keep very old but still functional appliances at home, just because they don't know how much this might be costing them. Many of them are also unaware of the energy rebates and concessions they are eligible to. Again, when analyzing their bills, there were many who were not receiving the state government rebate, and they didn't even know where to find it in their bill because the bill was quite confusing and difficult to read. Which brings another issue. They have difficulty in comparing and choosing good deals, and mainly because, as an interviewee brilliantly said, the Australian energy market is a confusopoly. It's almost like the retailers intentionally make it confusing so the consumer is kept out of the loop. Finally, although there are a billion offers online to every household type and consumption pattern, there is a lack of suitable deals for older people in vulnerable situations. Despite not having a face-to-face contact for those who are not able to engage online or through the phone, some of them are even being charged for paper bills, even though this is the only way they can receive and therefore pay the bill. As other studies have shown, social isolation is not only a cause but also an impact of energy poverty. Have a look at this quote from Sonia to understand how the prohibitive energy costs affected her capacity to socialize. Another issue is related to asking for help with bills from friends and family, and Jasmine brings to light what it is like to lose friends and how she felt about it because she couldn't pay them back. Another well-known impact of energy poverty is compromising on other expenses, essential and non-essential items. They try and make do with a very limited income and budgeting for every cent, but it's extremely difficult. Sonia and Violet can give you an idea of what it is like to have enough money only to exist and not being able to afford necessities such as food and clothing. In my data analysis, I have also some emerging ideas. It seems that older vulnerable people tend to restrict a lot more their energy use compared to other household groups. So, their energy bills are not a big proportion of their income. It can be as low as 2%, but still, they would be considered energy poor within the more subjective measures. And this might be related to the generational aspect. Many of them would say to me, "You know, Carol, I was a war baby. I've been through wars. I struggled my entire life. I'm used to that." So many won't even recognize their energy poor situation, which reminds me the metaphor of the boiling frog, as they are unable or unwilling to realize their own energy poor circumstance and seek proper assistance or help. Another thing, their energy consumption patterns are very different to the average Australian household because there's literally zero or very little heating and cooling, for example. Finally, it was also interesting to realize their understanding of energy waste when it comes to heating or cooling an entire room. They would much prefer, and in many cases could only afford to, very localized thermal comfortable, with portable appliances, for example, or the idea of insulating your own body and not your home. Finally, the data shows that approaching charities for assistance is actually their last option, and they feel extremely ashamed or embarrassed to do it. There is a stigma about charities for assistance, and in this sense, I wonder how we can frame these assistance programs to help this group. For those few interviewees who actually ask for help, they will talk about the red tape, the bureaucracy, and the bad experience they had when trying to get help, as you can see in this post from Daniel. Well, since we are living in these strange times of a global health crisis, I thought I'd also give you a glimpse of how COVID aggravated the energy poverty situation among older Australians. First, they have to spend more, or in many cases, all their time at home.
Many of these households would leave their homes for thermal comfort elsewhere, in a library, a community center, to save on energy use. And this is no longer an option. Due to their age and health conditions, they are very risk averse and afraid of exposing themselves to the virus. Spending more time at home either means using more energy and therefore increasing their bills, or restricting energy use and feeling thermally uncomfortable for longer. Second, the social isolation measures imposed increase their social exclusion. Because their interaction with other people and institutions dramatically reduced, and many have poor computer literacy skills, they are less able to get the trustworthy advice about their energy bills. Third, COVID has increased everyday expenses, such as groceries. Living on a very limited income and budgeting for every cent, increases in groceries and or medical expenses means less disposable income for energy bills. In many cases, these vulnerable households live below the poverty line after housing and energy costs are deducted. We are now very close to the end of our presentation, and I'd like to finish it in a more positive way. There is a lot we can do in terms of advocating for better policies and bringing awareness to the issue. First and foremost, and I guess every Australian would agree with me, we need to stop the confusopoly and make it compulsory for energy retailers to engage actively with vulnerable consumers in a way that suits them. We also need to increase energy literacy training among this group to help them to understand their bills and their charges. And finally, another suggestion is to reframe and simplify processes for assistance to avoid all the stigma and the embarrassment. Instead of it being their last option in a very desperate moment, how can we help them before it gets to that point? Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have learned a bit about my research topic, and if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Oh, and by the way, my supervisors and I wrote an article for the conversation on the COVID impacts for energy poor older households. If you'd like to know more about it, just scan this QR code. Bye bye and see you at the conference.